Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies and distinguished colleagues, the constantly changing geopolitical landscape brings not only new challenges, but exacerbates challenges we've already faced. The fact that we're celebrating 30 years since the adoption of this declaration is already a milestone in itself. However, we must reflect on whether the best practices of 30 years ago remain the best practices of today, and perhaps for the next 30 years. When this declaration was adopted, our shared history was witness to a disregard for minorities, especially in the areas of education, language, religious belief. 30 years after that landmark day, we rather worryingly find ourselves facing similar problems. The threats to educational, linguistic, and religious minorities persist, and this fact should continue to fuel our efforts in resolving these threats with speed and efficiency. Whilst, of course, we are all desperate to build back stronger from the COVID pandemic, this remains an enormous task across all sectors. In building back, we must prioritize a universal standard towards human rights and avoid continuing to play by the geopolitical handbook and its potential for lip service, which we have found ourselves so accustomed to. As the Secretary-General said when addressing the General Assembly yesterday morning, the United Nations focuses too much on endless discussions rather than creating meaningful and impact that is practical. We need to harness action-oriented approaches to ensure the proper treatment of all minorities. And to that end, in 2019, the Sovereign Order of Malta and Hungary signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen mutual cooperation while responding to the persecution of ethnic and religious minorities in crisis regions. An agreement arose as a consequence of the increasing number of acts of violence and persecution against minorities being witnessed in some countries in Europe. Furthermore, in combating discrimination towards minorities, we have, through our international aid agency, Malteser International, continued our efforts to promote the return of Christians and other religious minorities driven out of their homeland and persecuted by Daesh on the Nineveh Plain in Iraq. We're engaged in a large number of civic development projects in education and healthcare, consistent with our strategic objective of curbing the hemorrhage of Christians and other minorities from the Middle East, a region where there has traditionally been a strong dialogue between different faiths. The Sovereign Order of Malta thanks the President of the General Assembly for convening this reflection, as dialogue and open exchange are the only way we can ensure effective adaptation to the ever-changing geopolitical landscape. The identification and the protection of minorities is, by its very name, proof that important groups are in danger of being left behind. Listening to and valuing every voice, heart, and opinion is the true goal of honest democracy and a conscientious body politic. We need to harness that same energy, ambition, grit, and determination that have, since the inception of the UN, given a voice to the dispossessed, championed human rights, and sought to level the playing field for all people. The rights of minorities lie at the heart of human rights. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative.